One introduction RAWSEP view: the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove, and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP view: purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, or RAWSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this RAWSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning, and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025, and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives, and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Episode 57 DHXL, July 28, 2025 Trump distractions should not keep us from COVID vaccines in 2025. In episode 57 DHXL, 1 RAWSEP view of Trump tariffs, 2 Inside Medicine newsletter with 7 topics, 3 the Screwworm set to invade Texas if there is no state or federal fly factory intervention, 4 headlines from the New York Times main content. 1 RAWSEP view Trump tariffs. First, we see the demonstrations against Trump in Scotland with signs that say Scotland is already great. Then we see the distraction of Trump droning about the Great Tariffs Deal made with the European Union yesterday, followed by Ursula von Leyden dutifully repeating the word great. This last should not distract us from the Trump threats to human health that are being tallied up by RFK Junior. This summer, RFK Junior is at least delaying the life-saving COVID vaccines that are usually updated every fall in the 2020s since the 2021. If ever there was a tradition that needed saving, it is the tradition of autumnal COVID-19 vaccinations. This filing cabinet in the sky, that is the RAWSEP episodes, if rifled through, informs us that China and the European Union are taking steps to fight climate change and questions whether the trade deal between the United States and Europe is really good for Europe. There was a time when mutually beneficial negotiations were made between the United States and other countries in the world. The sooner the United States government is returned to one that other liberal democracies can trust, they will be treated with respect and mutual aid, the better for the entire world and its economies. 2 RAWSEP view in a preview to the article excerpted below from Inside Medicine newsletter. RFK Jr. may fire all voting members of the United States Preventive Services Task Force. The task force makes evidence-based recommendations about clinical preventive services. In June, Secretary Kennedy Jr. fired every member of the CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. We do not know what ACIP will do next, but it is highly likely that it will continue to undermine vaccine science. If the USPSTF follows the same path as ACIP, Americans could soon lose legal access to cost-free preventive services. The USPSTF prominently highlights when its own recommendations are based on evidence that the body itself considers insufficient. This kind of humility adds credence to their work. The point of the USPSTF is to follow the science, not popular opinion. We want evidence-based policymaking, not policy-based evidence making based on what we saw at the June ACIP meeting. There is a concern that a newly configured USPSTF would be likely to cherry-pick its evidence to reach a preordained conclusion on hobby horse topics for Secretary Kennedy Jr. 2 from the article headline, sorry, but thanks to RFK Jr. you now have to know what the USPSTF is, plus updates from the FDA and other must-know stories and public health excerpts edited by residents against wood smoke emission particulates of 501c3 nonprofit organization. Inside Medicine newsletter, July 28, 2025. In Inside Medicine, we have one larger story followed by some updates from inside the FDA, then we will round it out with 3 miscellaneous but important stories. Topic 1. RFK Jr. threatens to overhaul evidence-based preventive services in the United States. In a perfect world, most people would not have to know what the United States Preventive Services Task Force USPSTF is. HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. may fire all of its voting members. The USPSTF ESA, scientifically independent volunteer panel of national experts in disease prevention and evidence-based medicine. The task force works to improve the health of people nationwide by making evidence-based recommendations about clinical preventive services. At least, that is what it has been for decades, which is why its publications have long been considered among the most rigorous out there. For the first 3 decades of its existence, USPSTF recommendations were highly respected and influential. Today, the USPSTF carries its deliberation with transparency, requiring input from experts and public stakeholders. Teams of subject matter experts are called evidence-based practice centers, EBPT. Their assessments of the medical literature determine what preventive care a large number of Americans get covered for. Free Medicare and Medicaid are not bound by USPSTF recommendations, but they often follow them. The USPSTF is about to be under attack. We have seen this movie before. In June, Secretary Kennedy Jr. fired every member of the CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, another body whose recommendations must by law be followed by insurers. As we all know, Kennedy Jr. replaced a body of seasoned experts with a new panel of hand-picked frequently problematic replacements. In its first meeting, the newly installed body voted to remove thimerosal from U.S. flu vaccines, a safe preservative falsely linked to autism based on one low-quality presentation by a known anti-vaccine activist. We do not know what ACIP will do next, but it is highly likely that it will continue to undermine vaccine science. If the USPSTF follows the same path, Americans could soon lose legal access to cost-free preventive services. It is hard to imagine Secretary Kennedy Jr. would vacate the USPSTF without the intention to take away important services. If that were not the plan, why bother doing this? He has already signaled that he believes the group is too woke. I pause here to mention that the most recent publication of the USPSTF was entitled Intimate Partner Violence and Caregiver Abuse of Older or Vulnerable Adults. Screening what a woke topic. USPSTF has long been seen as a somewhat conservative expert body. When it comes to recommendations, it prominently highlights when its own recommendations are based on evidence that the body itself considers insufficient. This kind of humility adds credence to their work. A newly configured USPSTF would be likely to cherry-pick its evidence to reach a preordained conclusion on hobby horse topics for Secretary Kennedy Jr. If that happens, we will have lost another venerable American scientific institution. See this article for more information. As past USPSTF chairs, we fear for the future of the task force in the wake of a canceled July meeting. We would like to clarify its role and structure. That article was an opinion published in MedPage today. Topic 2. I have been spending a lot of time speaking with FDA insiders lately. The mood is not good over there. Here is a quick rundown on some of the stories developing there. A MedPage Today story reports the Food and Drug Administration has convened a handful of supposed expert panels on high-profile topics as of late, including antidepressants in pregnancy. These panels function differently from advisory committees, groups whose activities are governed by official policies designed to ensure quality, transparency, and public participation. The problem is that unlike advisory committees whose work must follow certain rules such as providing adequate advance notice, these panels seem to be hastily thrown together PR events that said their influence on any genuine regulatory activity remains opaque, not transparent. Topic 3. A Sightline story describes an ongoing exodus of FDA scientists. RIF's early retirements and increasingly demoralized scientists looking for work elsewhere have drastically reduced the capacity of the Food and Drug Administration to do its usual high-quality work. Newly installed FDA officials have signaled that they believe the work by teams containing some of our best scientific reviewers in America might be replaced by the judgment of one person. Topic for the new but apparently undertested AI tool of the FDA is busy making stuff up. Sweet. Topic 5. Every article published in the top journal of the CDC, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, now requires approval from HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. According to this report of a recent slowdown in publications, does that make RFK Junior the de facto editor-in-chief of MWR? That is a scary thought. Topic 6. PEPFAR, the U.S. program that has saved millions of lives through the prevention and treatment of HIV/AIDS, may once again be on the chopping block. The story of PEPFAR this year has been, will they or will not they kill it? Pressure has at times spared the program from elimination faced by most other global health programs. Thanks to DOGE, so far PEPFAR has been the one program that seemed poised to possibly survive. Dr. Atul Gawanda, who ran global health for USAID under President Biden, told Inside Medicine about this last week. Excerpts from the interview are lightly edited for clarity. PEPFAR has been cut to between 50%, 60% of its former budget. The plan to cut an additional $500 million in the rescission budget was turned back. HIV prevention PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis especially, has been largely stopped. There will be a small gesture of rolling out long-acting prevention like lenacapavir, a life-saving injection that prevents infections with just twice yearly dosing, but no other major pushes. Topic 7. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists announced that it will stop accepting federal funding for its programs given the current landscape. A statement to its members was shared on LinkedIn. 3. In medicine and science, avian flu wiped out poultry. Now the screwworm is coming for beef. RAWSEP view. How is the screwworm controlled? By dropping sterile male screwworm flies on a screwworm populations, leading to deaths of colonies of screwworms. Where do screwworms come into the United States? From Mexico. Does Mexico drop sterile male screwworms on a screwworm populations? They do, but not in enough numbers. In Texas, a special session of the Texas legislature was convened to ask the state for more funding for male sterile screwworm production, called a fly factory, but there has been no federal response since the United States House of Representatives went on recess early this July in order to contain a bipartisan looming vote in favor of opening the Epstein files. The screwworm, like the measles, may have been forgotten by many, but it is not new and like the measles, which has cropped up in Texas recently. Screwworm was once all but eradicated from the United States. Illegal livestock transport and warm weather patterns have also contributed to the climb of the screwworm north. It could reach Texas within 4 months. About 3% of U.S. cattle come from Mexico, but citing inadequate surveillance of screwworm, the Agriculture Department cut off imports of Mexican cattle in November. Federal officials resumed the trade in February after Mexico put in place more rigorous inspection protocols, but imports were shut off again in May after the pest was detected in Veracruz and Oaxaca. 3. From the article headline, avian flu wiped out poultry. Now the screwworm is coming for beef. The parasitic fly that attacks warm-blooded animals was eliminated from the United States in the 1960s, but it is creeping toward the Texas-Mexico border. A return of screwworm could harm already depleted cattle herds and raise beef prices. RAWSEP view, and in rare cases harm human life. Excerpts edited by Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, July 28, 2025. First came bird flu, which led to the culling of large swaths of the United States poultry flocks and the soaring egg prices that helped undermine the 2024 election campaign of former President Biden. Now ranchers in Texas and officials at the Agriculture Department are raising the next alarm. The New World Screwworm. Texas livestock producers and ranchers fear the United States is ill-equipped to handle a potential outbreak of screwworm, whose incursion into the country appears increasingly likely. Cattle farmers are urging Texas lawmakers, who on Monday gabbled in a 30-day special legislative session, to share the cost of a fly factory in Texas instead of waiting for the federal government. Governor Greg Abbott of Texas did not respond to questions about whether he would approve state funding for a fly factory. The governor has directed the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and the Texas Animal Health Commission to create a response team to lead the screwworm preparations in Texas. For a United States. RAWSEP view, the definition of terrorism. From the article headline, suspect in Traverse City Walmart stabbing attack faces terrorism charge. The New York Times. 4B business sexism. RAWSEP view, unsung and uncompensated. From the article headline, Joan Anderson, unsung heroine of hula hoop history, dies at 1:01. The New York Times. 4C business. RAWSEP view, a business that might have threatened male one-on-one dominance of women is hacked, probably by men or by women acting like the entitled and strangely named and spelled and pronounced Ghislaine Maxwell acted GT, who soon may be unleashed upon the world again to again enable red flag behavior by men if she can be persuaded to cover up the Trump and Epstein connection. From the article headline, what to know about the Hackett app where women share red flags about men. The New York Times. 4D business. RAWSEP view, the wringing of hands over the waning dominance of underachieving men in an information age must be big business, with a lot of crypto being traded rather than telling young men to hit the books. From the article headline, opinion, why are young men still struggling? The New York Times. 4E business. RAWSEP view, cheesemaker who monopolized cheese distribution to many big pizza makers. Who could have guessed? From the article headline, the Willy Wonka of cheese who revolutionized pizza, dies at 87. The New York Times. 4F business, the world has too much steel, but no one wants to stop making it. The New York Times. 4G climate change, helpful actions against climate change. China and EU issue joint climate statement. The New York Times. 4H climate change is making fire weather worse for the forests of the world. The New York Times. 4I Democrats plan $20 million fund to target Texas Republicans for redistricting. The New York Times. 4J Democrats. RAWSEP view, could these interviews be one data set for devising a strategy to win Latino voters back? How to persuade middle-income and poor voters to vote in their own interest for a change from the article headline Opinion Immigration Trump and the Economy. 11 Latino voters discuss the New York Times, 4K Medicine and Science RAWSEP. View, not only RFK Junior needs medical intervention from the article headline Infection from brain-eating amoeba kills boy in South Carolina, the New York Times, 4L Medicine and Science RAWSEP. View, murder is not the answer to high insurance premiums and denial of coverage. Updated United States government regulations in a future Democratic administration would seem to be the answer from the article headline United Health grew to be a Leviathan. Then came the backlash. The New York Times, 4M Medicine and Science RAWSEP. View, we need the Center for Disease Control, now under the incompetent RFK Jr., to regain its competency more than ever. From the article headline Avian Flu Wiped Out Poultry, now the screwworm is coming for beef. The New York Times, 4M Medicine and Science RAWSEP. View, in order to obtain the COVID vaccine in a timely manner, we need to cede control of medicine to scientific evidence, which has been hard-won and should be celebrated as having contained the COVID pandemic in the past. The miraculous and modern and scientifically based COVID-19 vaccine administered by the highly trained and already highly regulated medical professions. From the article headline Opinion, what happens when doctors cannot trust the government. The New York Times, 4O Medicine and Science RAWSEP. View, this is not just a test, this is a potentially life-saving revelation. As much of scientific and medical research is from the article headline, this test can see a heart attack in your future. The New York Times, 4P Movies RAWSEP. View, the Get Out franchise, which is wonderfully woke music for movies. From the article headline The Classical Side of Michael Abels, the Jordan Peele frequent collaborator. The New York Times, 4Q Technology Inequality. Opinion, how smartphones are breeding a new kind of inequality. The New York Times, 4 Our technology use RAWSEP. View, AI may be used for good. Stay tuned or stay away. From the article headline Believers in Manifestation are using AI to visualize their dream lives. The New York Times, 4S Trump Actions Cryptocurrency Corruption RAWSEP. View, an example of how cryptocurrency is used in a corrupt way, aided by duping believers in a particular religion. A tale as old as time, updated cryptically and cynically. From the article headline Denver pastor and wife face charges in God-inspired cryptocurrency scheme. The New York Times, 4T Trump Actions. Opinion, 1984 has not changed, but America has. The New York Times, 4U Trump Budget Cuts to fund tax breaks for the rich. Passengers evacuate smoky American Airlines plane at Denver Airport. The New York Times, 4V Trump and Epstein fallout RAWSEP. View, Thomas Massie, a Republican House representative, is what Democrats need to save America. Do not let that secret out. From the article headline Massie criticizes Johnson on recess as he tries to force Epstein files. Vote. The New York Times, 4W Trump and Epstein fallout RAWSEP. View, the dumb and dumber of political thought, the various conspiracy theories with Epstein landing at the top of the heap at this moment, which is bad for Trump, although Trump instigated the dumb and dumber era of conspiratorial thinking. From the article headline From Epstein to Obama, the Trump Washington is consumed by competing conspiracies. The New York Times, 4X Trump Tariffs Canada, Mexico, China, and the European Union timeline, a timeline of the Trump tariff fight with Canada, Mexico, China, and the EU. The New York Times, 4Y Trump Tariffs for Trump EU trade deal was badly needed. The New York Times, 4Z Trump Tariffs Trump live updates. US and EU reach preliminary trade deal. The New York Times, 4AA Mexico Trump Tariffs bipartisan pair of House members to meet with Sheinbaum in Mexico. The New York Times, 4AB Scotland Trump Tariffs RAWSEP. View, best protest sign Scotland is already great. From the article headline 8 Golfing Trump is greeted by protesters in Scotland. The New York Times, 4AC United Kingdom Trump Tariffs Trump to host Starmer at his golf courses in Scotland. Live updates. The New York Times, 4AD United Kingdom RAWSEP. View, does the United Kingdom keep bad actors off the internet better than the United States? From the article headline citing new rules, Meta says it will end political ads in EU. The New York Times, 4E Europe Trump Tariffs. Is the EU trade deal with Trump good for Europe? The New York Times, 4AF Europe Trump Tariffs RAWSEP. View, what are the other world crises that Europe is distracted from by Trump tariffs? From the article headline Europe worried by other global crises agrees to the Trump trade deal. The New York Times, 4AG Germany clean energy transport train derails in Germany. The New York Times, 4AH Russia RAWSEP. View, actual facts rather than conspiracies are so inconvenient to Trump. Will actual facts matter to voters in 2026? The cost of living, for example, and the cost of food, housing, and education? The need for medical and scientific research to save lives? From the article headline New reports on Russian interference show the Trump claims on Obama are overblown. The New York Times. Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction RAWSEP. View, the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM2.5, and PM2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom. The Eco-Design Wood Stove and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. RAWSEP View Purple Air PM2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.